Hello, welcome to another video tutorial on building Shiny apps. And in this tutorial, we will see how to use file input function to add the file control option to Shiny app. Adding file control allows the user to upload the file and perform further processing on the content of the file. Now, this file can be a CSV file or a text format file having comma, semicolon as delimiter or spaces, tabs, whatever it is. So let's go ahead and run the app. I already have the server.r and ui.r here, and let me just go ahead and run the app for you so we can see what we are going to make today. Okay, here we have the app, and as the app is loaded, we see that on the left hand side we have the upload file option, which allows the user to select the desired file, maybe CSV file or the text file. The default maximum file size is 5 MB, which could be increased, and we will see how to do that. We also have different parameters which we can pass in the read.table function in server.r. We can choose whether the user may want to have the header as true or not, string as factors or not, what kind of separator we have, comma, semicolon, tab, space. Maybe it's a text file, so we may have space or tab, comma, semicolon, or even we can put our own whatever is there as a separator, we can code for that here. We also see on the main panel we have this image which is loaded the first time when the app launches. And let's see what happens when I click on choose file. So I click on choose file, and let's go and select, say, this CSV file, and you see what happens. The image is now gone. So basically we have some logic in server.r that before the file is uploaded, or when the app loads, there should be this image, and once the file is loaded, then we should have these tabs with all kinds of details here, right? So the first tab here shows um, the name of the file which we uploaded, the size, the type, and the data path. So what happens is the file is loaded here. It's loaded temporarily in some path, and that's the path here. You see under data path, and there is a reason why I'm showing here, because this clarifies how it functions in server.r. So we basically access this data path to read the file, and we'll see in a couple of minutes. Then we have another tab where we have the data itself. So whatever was the content of this file, we got the data here in the table. Now, say for example, if we see here, we see the sepal length, sepal width, petal length, petal width, and species are part of the observations. However, I don't want that. I want to tell R that yes, header is true, so include the header. Okay, I selected the header, and you see now sepal length, sepal width, length, petal width, species are now part of header. We also have another tab where we have the summary, again displayed in the table format, and this is how this app is working. Now you can play around with this, add more tabs, do some types of some type of regression analysis or any plotting, but this is just a very basic demo. Okay, we are in ui.r, and the first thing we have here is loading the Shiny package. So library Shiny, we have the Shiny UI function telling that this is the UI script. Fluid page, title panel, we are just printing file input. You can put your own text, whatever you want. Then we have sidebar layout. In sidebar layout, we have sidebar panel function. We have file input, and there are multiple parameters or arguments we can pass in this function. I'm just using the input ID and label. So the input ID is file and the label is upload the file. Just by this function you can see that little button there giving the file upload option or control. Then we are printing a help text using the help text function saying default max file size is 5 MB. We have another help text here saying select the read table parameters below, and the parameters are defined using checkbox input, so the user can check or uncheck them. The input ID is header, label header, and the default value which I have given here is false. You can give this true as well. There is no problem. It's just the way you want. I didn't want it to be checked. I want the user to check in based on his need. So it can be true or false, whatever you want it to be default. Remember that we are going to use this input ID in server.r and use it for some processing. Similarly, we have another checkbox input here, and this is for string s factors, and I have the input ID as string s factors, also the label string s factors. Again, the default value is false. You can have it true or false, whatever you want. Then I have radio buttons, um, and this is for the separator. The input ID is sep label separator, and the choices we have here is the comma with its value is comma. Then we have semicolon, we have tab and spaces. I've just followed the syntax of radio button. Function selected is comma. So that's all we have in the sidebar panel. Then in the main panel we are actually um, using the outcome or the output variable from server.r, and using the UI output we are rendering it. So basically, just imagine in server.r we used render UI to dynamically generate the output we want, and we are calling that output variable and using along with UI output here to display it in the main panel. Okay, so far so good. So let's go to server.r. Okay, in server.r the first thing we have is uh, we are loading the Shiny package, so library Shiny. We then have Shiny server function input output. Shiny server function is telling R that this is the server side script or server.r. Then we have bunch of reactive functions here, render table, and we also have render UI here. So we'll go through each of them. Before we do anything, let me explain. We have used the file input function here, and the input ID is file. So usually what happens is we try to access the input variable from ui.r into server.r, and the way we do is we say input dollar whatever is the name of the input variable, and in this case the input variable was file, right? So input dollar file. Now input dollar file is not actually going to give the file for R, or basically in Shiny input dollar file, whatever is coming from this input ID is actually a data frame. Remember when I showed the app initially, the first step was about file showing a data frame in a table. It had name, type, data path, all those things. So basically what it is returning is that data frame. And so that is how I got that data frame. I used render table. So whatever was the outcome of input dollar file was stored in the file df, which is file data frame, and I used it inside the tab. We will see in a couple of minutes how I used it, but basically the data frame of the file showing the name, type, size, whatever the data path, all those things can be accessed using input dollar file. So how to get the data? Okay, so we have a reactive function here called data. So what we are doing is we are using a read.table function here, and in the read.table function, usually if you use read.table in R, you give the path or file name, and that's what we are going to do here. We are going to use input dollar file. In that data frame we have a column called data path, and that's what we are going to access here. So what I did basically is I assigned input dollar file to file1. That means file1 is that particular data frame that has all those information around the name of the file, type, data path, and then I'm accessing that data path here by saying file1 data path. That's how R would know where is the file stored. Then we are also defining inside the read.table function what would the separator be. This is coming from ui.r input $sep. This is coming from the ui.r, the sep input id from the radio button. Header input $header, and string as factors is again coming from input from ui.r. All these things are coming from here. Header, strings as factors, these are the input IDs, and we are using them here. So what that means, if it is false or true, meaning checked, unchecked or checked, whatever separator the user is using or choosing, that comes here in the read.table, and the outcome is basically the data, the entire data, whatever is there in the CSV file, in all those columns and rows, gets assigned to data. Okay, so this is reactive function. So if you change the separator or header, check, uncheck, it will be dynamically affecting, and the data might change based on how we are using the read.table and passing the arguments in it. So we are good with this reactive function. We are also good with this read.table, which is actually not returning the data but returning the data frame, which contains the name of the file, type, data path. Then we have another read table function, and this is to return the summary of the data. So the way we have done is we have called the data, the reactive data output from here, and used inside the summary function, so that it returns the summary of the content which is there in the CSV file, and we are assigning it to the output variable called sum. Now here you see in all these reactive functions I have put something called if is dot null file1, or if is dot null data uh, return null or nothing basically. That is because if we don't put this, what might happen is it might throw an error. What if app is loaded or launched the first time? There is no data to be loaded, right? So we need to put some condition. What happens when there is no data or no file loaded, what to do? And so what I'm saying is don't return anything. And if you have the file, then return the desired outcome, which is either the summary or the input file data frame or the data itself. That's how I've coded this. Then we also have another render table function here, which is actually just returning the entire data in the table format. So render table. Again, I'm using the data which I received earlier and calling it here in this render table, assigning it to the output variable table. And all these variables we can either use directly in ui.r, in the main panel, or wherever you want. But what I did is basically I have used them in my render UI. Now there is a reason why I used render UI. If you see my earlier videos, render UI is used to dynamically generate the UIs. um, and so in this case what I wanted is to put some logic. If the file is not loaded, display an image, and if it is loaded, display the tab set panels, and display the content of the file, summary, statistics, or whatever you want. So here is that logic. So render UI, inside the render UI I put this logic. If null, data is null. Okay, if data is null means there is no data, then show the image. That is, data would be null when there is no file loaded. And so this is the code which is showing the file. Now there is a key here, but before that, this is the syntax. What I have done is I have used tags within the HTML. Actually, inline, this is called inline tagging. So I have used HTML tag element here, and within the h5 function I have used, I'm calling image using the image tag. In HTML it would be img under the less than greater than. However, in Shiny we call it as tags $img. Again, source src is nothing but source, where I will define what is the name of the file, and we can also define height and width. It's up to us, and other parameters you want to set. So this is the code where um, we are basically calling that image. Now if there is a data, if there is a file loaded and data is there, then what we need is tab set panel. I don't need the image there. I would need the um, tab set panel. So what I can do is, in the tab set panel, I just followed the syntax. So the first one was about the file, and I used table output function. And what I did is the data frame. I wanted the data frame, so I called the output variable file df here in my tab set to show the file data frame. Similarly, for the data itself, I used again the table output and call the table output variable, and same for the tab set panel summary. I call table output function on some output variable. So this is how I have created. Now this render UI is actually going to either return the image or this tab set panel based on whether the file is loaded or not. So whatever is returned is stored in tb output variable, and I'm calling this output variable tb here in UI output. That's how we are displaying the tab set panel there. Now there are two key points I'm going to talk about. One is where to store this image, so the browser can use it or call it whenever needed. And second thing, I discussed about the increasing the size of the maximum size of the file, right? It was 5 by default, but here I'm showing it can be increased to 9 MB, and this is what you need to do before the Shiny server function. Put this code here: options shiny.max request size 9 into 1024 to the power 2. So this is what is going to increase the size to 9 MB versus 5 MB. Okay, we will run the app and we will see what I was talking about, the image, right? So let me run that. So let's see that folder. So here is my folder where I have the ui.r and the server.r. This iris.cv CSV was just so we can load it. We can have any other CSV. It need not to be in this folder. It can be the file which you need to load here can be in any folder. That is something, there is no rule for that where that file can be. However, the image which we are actually going to load here when the app is launched has to be in a folder called www. This is key here. So you have your R working directory, or the directory where you are having, in this case I have this as file input, and I have ui.r server.r files here, and in the same place you need to have a folder called www. This folder, basically what it does is it makes whatever files are underneath it available to the browser when you run the app. So in this case, if I run the app and I have this png or this image inside the www folder, it will make this image available to the browser. Now instead of this image, you can also even have video. All you need is to make changes in server.r. Instead of that image, you need to use the inline HTML tag for video, and make sure that you have the video inside the www folder.